friends. We're back. Your favorite podcast of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 596. We're recording on November the 21st. And yeah, it's cold here in Toronto. Probably where Brianna is too. How are you?
I'm good. It is cold here. Yes, it is cold, but the sun is out, so I
Yes.
will take it. But I'm good. We have Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday, so just, a really busy work week for the next 2 days and trying to be ready to have some downtime with family and friends. So I'm excited. But yeah, that's all that's going on here, just
Yeah.
like
Well, yeah, to all of our American friends, happy Thanksgiving for sure. It's always a great time to get together with friends and family. Yeah, and I'm super thankful to be in Toronto because our friends just around the other side of the lake in Buffalo got about 7 feet of snow over the weekend. So that and we got nothing, literally nothing.
wow,
And we're like an hour drive away, so it's kind of on the same lake, so it's kind of crazy.
that's
Um,
crazy. It is. We're
but
also grateful for all of our listeners, so thank you.
yes, absolutely. So yeah, and we have the World Cup on now, so lots going on over there, and lots of controversy about that,
Yeah.
and some location tracking as well going on, which we'll talk about maybe in a few episodes from now, later, maybe early December, as that comes to a close. But we have a good show for you. 4 stories as per usual. Some interesting news, some acquisitions, and I'll let Brianna kick us off.
Okay, well, let's go over to the QSR area and talk about Subway. They have unveiled a new smart fridge. So they're trying to take advantage of other locations besides their restaurants, right? Think of airports, truck stops, etc. So they have these fridges. Think about kind of, a vending machine on steroids, if you will. It will be fully stocked and made, freshly made sandwiches, drinks, chips, the normal thing that you would get when you walk into a Subway traditional restaurant. And so this is part of their like grab and go that is growing program that is growing for these non-traditional locations. So some of the tech features that they've built into their machines include the ability to speak to the fridge. So you can ask questions about probably like what's in a sandwich, perhaps, and about the selections that are inside. And then there's also a weight sensing component. So the shelves can recommend the right amount, right? So say this is how much it weighed, this is what was taken out, and they can therefore charge the correct amount. Also, something that they mentioned was that after every purchase, the fridge has a self-sanitation aspect to it with UVC light, which is very interesting and probably important when it comes to food. They first opened this type of fridge in September, so just a couple of months ago at the University of California, San Diego. And now this is like part of their growing investment. So they have over 400-ish grab and go locations. And that includes unmanned kiosks and coolers, and now these smart fridges. So about 5,900 of the North American restaurants, more than 25% of their footprint are in colleges, hospitals, airports, truck stops, things of that nature. So I think this is obviously a more economical way to scale up. And some numbers that are important to hear about the success here is that they reported that for this past year, same store sales are up 13% compared to 2021. And they have a Subway series menu, which is this preset menu of 12 different sandwiches, and it has helped lift same store sales by 8.4% just in this last third quarter. So obviously, I think this is, a way to improve and extend their reach at a very cost-effective level. So I think this is smart, especially if you can service like a regional area with, fresh sandwiches and things of that nature. I feel like it'd be kind of difficult to do, but you see this inside of like a lot of gas stations all the time, not only the Subway sandwich stores, but, you see like these pre-made sandwich selections. So why not just have a special smart fridge that is powered specifically for Subway? And it sounds like a lot of these probably locations are reaching out and asking about, hey, how can I kind of, rent one of these or be a franchisee for one of these smart fridges and have this included in my offerings or stores. So I think this is smart, right? Like, I think that convenience is king. We know this, like there's more and more factors. We're just trying to figure out like, how do we engage and get what we want in the fastest way possible. And so I think that this is something that can be somewhat contained, obviously, than more than like a kiosk that's open, as well as just serviced and easily updated and tracked. So I think that it's a smart rollout. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. Not a lot to add there. I think for me, a couple thoughts. So I think one is I like this for existing franchisees, as a way to drive incremental revenue, because basically they pop these fridges into local businesses, and then it's the actual local franchisee that's making the sandwiches and then putting them in in those local fridges, and they're deriving the incremental revenue from that. So I like that as a franchisee, as a way to sort of find new ways to increase your your sales and draw more customers and things like that. So that's really cool. I think the question I have, I guess, is, are these fridges, wherever they're going to be placed in the colleges, hospitals, airports, et cetera, do they show up, when you like go and do like a Google search for Subway locations? So like from a local search point of view, are they going to sort of optimize, their search results, or have them listed as actual Subway locations? Because I think, for a lot of people, when you're looking, for food, and you jump on Google, or you jump on, whatever you're using to do that, or Waze or what have you, I think it's important that if you're going to have all these additional sort of mini outlets, if you will, with these fridges, that they show up on the search results, right? Because I think, that just is going to increase your likelihood of success in driving revenue. So hopefully they're thinking about that. I know a lot of our friends at companies like Rio and DevHub and whatnot are probably on it already. So in getting them listed, but to me, I think that's important. And I guess obviously, these guys, Subway's been in sort of decline, in terms of number of stores and things like that over the last number of years. So I see this as a great way to do that. And the model's not new. I mean, it's very similar to how Krispy Kreme operates. You see they have their sort of the main Krispy Kreme sort of bakery franchisees, where they're cranking them off the line and you can watch the experience. But then they have a lot of like local, other outlets where, that franchisee is making the donuts and then, putting them on a shelf somewhere else, even in Walmarts and things like that. So I think it's a model that can work. So I like it. All right. Yeah, so on to our next story now. So this one is an acquisition. So our friends at RetailNext, Alexei and company out in California, have made an acquisition of a competitor, a UK-based competitor called Retail Performance. So these guys are companies that play in the space of foot traffic monitoring, indoor, positioning, building heat maps and traffic flow patterns, within stores and buildings and all that kind of stuff. And RetailNext is certainly a company that, from an LBMA point of view, we've worked with over the years. And so, I think from what I've read about this, it's simply about market share and expansion. So they say that they see this as a way to sort of increase their presence in Europe and Asia. They're currently tracking 1 billion customer visits across more than 4,500 retail locations in 50 countries. And so it's just about, gaining more market share and scale, and a bit of a sort of acqui-hire as well. So they get 40 new employees coming in as part of the acquisition, as well as expanding their operations to the Philippines, where they don't have an office presence today. That is RetailNext doesn't, and obviously grow their footprint in the UK, where Retail Performance is based. So I don't have a lot more to say about this, other than to say that I think, and we talked about this at our Retail Loco conference recently in Atlanta, that I think we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence now in Bluetooth beacon technology and indoor positioning again. And I think, it's not unlike, sort of the rebirth of the QR code, that COVID kind of, brought back to us, with everybody scanning everything on menus and so on. And in a lot of ways, I think, beacon networks and indoor positioning networks were built for targeting purposes, I would say a lot of them in 2014 and 15, 16, and kind of sort of, died out with COVID because you didn't have foot traffic in stores in the same way. And now that that traffic's coming back, I think you're starting to see a resurgence on that as well. And I think that coupled with, the changes in privacy around the IDFA and Google Ad ID and things like that, I think finding other ways to understand where people are using hardware-based sensors and things like that are driving a new sort of resurgence of these technologies. So I see a lot of opportunities for companies in this space. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, I don't have a ton to add, but I do think that more and more indoor navigation is like needed. It's almost as if we forgot how to find certain things in certain places because we were ordering everything online for so long.
Yeah.
And so, it never fails that I walk into a grocery store that is perhaps a different location than my typical one. And I'm just trying to find that really, that thing really quick. And a lot of times it's like a mega grocery store here. And just being able to get to certain areas and understand like what aisle it's on and which side of the store it's on and all of that is needed. So that's like just a small, way that I think of, okay, if I could just navigate this within the app, it would be really helpful. But I do think that more and more, again, this is going to be important. And especially when you think of very like dense areas and not being able to even use GPS a lot of times, right? In those areas where it'd be very effective, that we're going to have more and more need for this. So,
yeah, I agree.
All right. So sticking kind of with location data, a location-based marketing and analytics startup out of Montreal called DRAKO, DRAKO, has announced that it is now supporting Unified ID 2.0. Which is this upgraded identity solution that is built for the open internet. If you're not familiar, this is also called UID2. Well, it's also enabling this partnership with notable DSP, the Trade Desk. So the DRAKO data will now be available via Trade Desk platform for buyers. And, Trade Desk doesn't really have like its own proprietary data within their marketplace that I know of, but they enable a whole host of third-party data. So this will be, available, something that you can activate via the Trade Desk platform. So really what this allows advertisers to do is to create this identifier from hashed and salted email addresses. And this is in an effort to maintain the value of or the reach of a specific audience across the internet while aiming to obviously keep those privacy controls that continue to be, at the forefront of everything happening in the advertising industry. So basically, this is one of the many workarounds, for the cookieless future and for what we've seen as the deprecation of IDFA identifiers and still being able to reach that unique audience. So if you have a unique audience, you have those email addresses and you want to continue to reach them across your advertising, this would allow that as well. So this will be available either direct DRAKO's in-house managed service department or, can be activated through, the Trade Desk. So, to me, this is kind of like, another run-of-the-mill marketplace activation. We've got tons of other location-based providers that have these prepackaged audiences or the ability to do this potentially, whether that's Foursquare, everything that they did through Placed and Factual and all of those. And then you've got, Place IQ that had theirs and like point of interest visitors and all of these other pieces that are available through various marketplaces. So this is just another extension of that in my mind. But what I do like about this is that the fact that this is available through in-house managed services, and then they're just enabling this and getting probably a little more buy-in and a little more usage when you're available on a platform like the Trade Desk that is just used by so many. Is kind of table stakes if you're trying to sell audiences and location-based audiences specifically and connecting those dots. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's not rocket science. It's done by a lot of other players in the space, but for a startup, it's good to see that they're, partnering with a really large company and making some headwind there, maybe. Thoughts?
Yeah, again, like I think you covered it. I would say, you know, number one, as a Canadian, great to see Canadian tech startups, you know, like this, you know, having success and getting themselves on a platform like the Trade Desk that everybody's using. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the way that, you know, they're approaching it with, you know, audience segments for targeting, you know, purposes, I think is absolutely what you know, the brands and the agencies that we work with at the LBMA are looking for right now. I think there's, you know, generally a movement away from you know, specific targeting, you know, based on individual IDs or you know, that true one-to-one type of approach. And we've talked about this before, and more towards this sort of audience or cohort-based you know, marketing type of campaign. So yeah, I don't know a lot about their, you know, their specific data sets at DRAKO. I will investigate that further. In fact, I'm actually heading to Montreal tomorrow, so maybe I can find some time to squeeze in a quick meeting with these guys while I'm there. So, yeah, I think this, you know, this makes a lot of sense, and I think, you know, being on a platform like the Trade Desk is a win, just in terms of, you know, scale and visibility to what you're doing. You know, especially when you're startup. So good for them. All right, final story. So we're going to talk about two companies that you probably know within the LVMA community. So the first is NextNav. So NextNav has been very, very active in kind of the 3D, three-dimensional locationing, positioning type of technology, doing a lot of work also in the AR and VR space. And they have announced a new licensing partnership with a very active LVMA member company called Metcom, which is based in our Japanese operations. So this is around delivering what they call a resilient, precise, and secure solution for 3D position, navigation, and timing. Or otherwise known as a PNT solution, so position, navigation, and timing. And this is happening in Japan. Metcom is going to deploy the NextNav terrestrial beacon system, which is called TerraPoint, into this PNT kind of critical infrastructure play that's going on in Japan right now. So Metcom does a lot of work with the government in the Japanese market. And this is sort of an alternative way to do positioning, you know, other than using, you know, satellite positioning or the GPS systems or things like that, that typically can be more accurate and more viable. And I think specifically when we're talking about location and targeting and accurate positioning technology, you know, the 3D piece of it, or the, you know, having sort of not just lat long, but, you know, some sort of altitude component, I think becomes really important, especially in a market like Japan, where you have high density and lots of skyscrapers and, you know, multi-story shopping malls and things like that. It becomes, you know, really, really important. And when you're talking about, you know, sort of critical infrastructural type of services, you know, emergency services or things like that, then, you know, it's absolutely necessary, right? You know, to have, you know, that accuracy, right? You know, some of the sort of more traditional, you know, tracking type of solutions, you know, have you know, issues when they run into walls and concrete and pillars and other kinds of things that we've talked about. So that having, you know, sort of a blend of, you know, what we're talking about earlier with companies like the RetailNext and the indoor positioning space, you know, and the importance of that in terms of accurate mapping indoors, then applied to sort of critical infrastructure and having accurate positioning becomes, you know, even more important. So I like this partnership, and obviously for, you know, especially for our partners Metcom over in Japan, I think this is a great play for them as they team up with, you know, the Kyocera and Sony are part of the, you know, the rollout that they're doing there in Japan with this as well. So I think it's great. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, not a ton to add. I think you covered a lot of it. It's good to see a mashup of what I feel is like a good partnership and expansion for both teams. And so again, like those location services are needed. It can be tough to navigate, especially in a really dense and urban area that's growing like taller and not, more spread out. So yeah, I like seeing this. I think it's important.
Yeah. So that's our show for this week, folks. You've been listening and watching episode 596 of Location Weekly. Yes, we're only 4 away from 600 now. That's kind of crazy. But we thank you as always for your time. And if you have story ideas, reach out to us. If you have feedback on something we've covered, we want to hear about that too. Give us some like, some love on whichever platform you're consuming this on. And also, the other thing I should mention is we have just recently announced the launch of our Best Retail Cases platform here in North America. So if you have a great case study that you want to highlight, I encourage you to go to bestretailcases.com, put in your case study there into the platform. We've just recruited an amazing jury that's going to be going through all those case study submissions, and the awards for our first North American cohort will be presented at NRF in January in New York. So I know Aubriana will be in New York for sure. So you can see her in person. All right, everybody, thanks and have a great week.
Bye.